welcome, you're welcome. I'm so glad to be here again. So glad to be here again. All right. Let me see in the chat room. Are you excited to be here this morning? I know, we're still waiting for a lot of people that need to be here. So if you know anybody who is meant to be here, I want you to speak with them. Any colleague who is supposed to be in this meeting this morning, reach out to them and tell them we are live. Let them know that we have started. You're welcome. You're welcome. I want you to tag somebody in the chat room, a colleague in the chat room. You're welcome to this edition of the post-module webinar for the CyberSecure Nigeria program. All right, good morning. I'm so glad this morning, and one of the things that I'm excited about is I have a colleague with me. We're going to be co-hosting this together today. It promises to be an exciting session this beautiful day. I have the pleasure of introducing Ire this morning. Ire, how are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you.
Yeah, let's the cyber champs meet you.
All right, good morning, everyone. My name is Iremide Olasope, and I'm excited to be a part of the post-module 4 training. I'm so excited, and I humbly welcome you all.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Ire. It's good to have you on board this beautiful morning. So please reach out to your colleagues who need to be here. Let's reach a very good number as we begin this morning. Like I mentioned, it's going to be very, very exciting session here today. We have a facilitator in the house already who I'll be introducing in due course. We also have the project coordinator in the house this morning, and a number of colleagues who are here today. We are all colleagues now, in the bid to secure our respective institutions and become effective cyber champs. All right. This morning, I have some things for us as a form of activity. Let's do that this morning just to, settle in as we await our colleagues as they join in into this meeting this morning. I have some questions for us. I have some icebreakers for us this morning, and they promise to be very interesting. In a second, you see it on your screen. There's a, you could scan a QR code if you are joining on your laptop. Just use your mobile phone to scan that QR code and go to that site. Or just visit, it's coming up. Just a second. All right, so visit Slido. If you've taken any participants response, content like this before, Slido, sil.do. Yeah. So on your screen, you see the URL, slido.com, or scan that QR code to do that. Let me give just 30 seconds to do that quickly. Let me give 30 seconds to do that. All right. So it's going to be an interactive and, kind of competitive exercise. All right. So I'm seeing people joining already. I see Inka. All right. So please join. It's slido.com. Slido.com. Let me drop that in the chat room. All right. Slido.com. Okay. Let me wait. There are 4 people on that platform already. 5. Let's have more. Let's have more. Let's have more. Okay. So as we are doing this, if you've joined already, please just reach out to your colleagues who are not yet here and let them know that we have started. Let them know we have started. All right, let me wait for a bit more. We have about 10 seconds more. Just join. All right. Okay. We have about 15 people currently. Let's have more. The more the merrier, okay? The more the merrier. And I believe you are seeing your names as you are joining. And then just to confirm that you are in, we have a number of questions to ask. Nothing hard, just for, something light. Let me put it that way. Yes, it's not an exam. It's not a test. It's just for us to interact. And it's just for the fun of it, really. Okay, a few more, and we'll be on. A few more. I have 88 people on this call currently, and I'm having just about 20 people who have joined the Slido platform. Let's have more. Let's have more. Let's have more. Let's have a very considerable number of us on that platform. Okay, the numbers are increasing both on the platform and in the meeting. But I know we are more than this, way more than this. Way more than this. All right. In a few seconds, we'll be coming up with the questions, but please keep joining. As you're joining, you meet us wherever we are on that point so that we don't dwell and waste much time on this. Okay. All right, so let's start. Let's come up with the first question. Are we all? So you help me on this.
Okay, so the first question says, I have keys but no locks. I have space but no room. You can enter, but you can't go outside. What am I? I'll say that again. I have keys but no locks. I have space but no room. You can enter, but you can't go outside. What am I? Computer, keyboard, password, browser.
Okay.
Let's have your answers, please.
Okay. Mind you have 20 seconds to answer each question. 20 seconds. So
75% chose keyboard.
Okay. Are you giving the answer now or after everything? Okay.
25% password.
Okay.
Votings have closed already.
Votings have closed. Yes.
You have 25 seconds.
25 seconds for each question. All right. All right. Can we review the question, the answer now? Okay. Let's move. The next question. Or the next riddle. Okay. We have a leaderboard here, and Abel Badmos is topping the leaderboard, followed by Njideka and then Olusegun Taiwo. Let's keep this coming. Let's see who is going to be at the top of the leaderboard at the end of this exercise. Okay. So let's have the next question.
I have a face but no eyes. I show you everything, but I can't see you. What am I? I have a face but no eyes. I show you everything, but I can't see you. What am I? A webcam, monitor, CPU, or a projector?
Okay, which is the correct answer?
Okay, 90% chose monitor, 7% webcam.
Okay. All right, the correct answer is monitor. Let's see who's topping the chat now. Mind you, it's a game of speed as well as being correct. Injek has toppled Badmos. All right, cool. Let's go on. I think we have a couple of more questions. Yeah.
So it's more like fastest fingers.
Fastest finger. Yes.
I can connect millions of people, yet I don't know anyone personally. What am I? A telephone, a Facebook, router, or an internet? I can connect millions of people, yet I don't know anyone personally. What am I?
Okay. I see people dropping answers in the chat room. Okay. So there's this platform, Slido, you see on your screen. Just go to slido.com and enter that number 8242796, and you can be a part of this. Okay.
90% chose internet.
Okay.
All right. So
Njikeka still tops the charts. All right.
Twice in a row.
Yes, twice in a row. Yeah. Congratulations. Yeah, Njikeka. You have more questions, yeah? All right. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, everyone who has participated in this. I believe we are all settled in. I see the numbers have increased, but I know we are more. All right, we're more than this. So please reach out to those who need to be here and let them know that today's session has commenced. We have started. We are live already. Okay. I will invite my colleague Ire now to introduce the.
Okay. So once
next
again,
item.
thank you for participating in the Slido quiz. So join me in welcoming the project coordinator of the NetHope CyberSecure Nigeria project, Dr. Yinka Fakunde. Let's see your reactions in the chat. Let's see your reactions.
Thank you very much, Iwe, and thank you very much, Tolu. And a very good morning to everyone. It's nice having everybody back again. But I want to say thank you for joining, wherever you're joining from. It's so nice to see everybody's faces again. So just some quick things that I would love to mention before we get into it. Okay, I can see the comment. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, just like I mentioned, I have a couple of things to just talk about before we go into today's post-model webinar proper from the facilitator. I mean, from our presenter this morning. There is something that I would love to share with us. Actually, three things today, which is where we stand on progress. And another thing will be, why am I pushing further into the course, and what is also coming next will be the institutional visit. But before then, allow me to share my screen. I believe everybody can see my screen now. This is a snapshot that I'm actually sharing with us. I actually pulled this out yesterday evening. As you can see, we have 597 participants across 21 institutions. Yeah, let me show you this. Across 21 institutions on the CyberSecure Nigeria course. And the average progress sits at 38%. I mean, that's real movement, if you ask me, but there is still room because we have 445 of us that are actively in progress, which is fantastic. But we have 152 that is still yet to start. And another 354 are actually sitting in a risk zone where we would love to see more momentum happening there. Now, the leaderboard. Okay, sitting at number one this week is the Nigerian Stored Products Research Institute at 100% of their people have started, and that is averaging 79% in progress. That's the standard, okay? And then right behind them, we have Boeing at number two, also at 100% started with an average of 63, average progress of 63%. And then the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, rounds off at the top three. I wanted to do something. You can drop your institution in the chat if you see your institution, and let's see where you land in the list. You can just put it up in the chat and see where you are with your other colleagues as well. Now, and I also want to, I also want to call out our top movers this period. Those are the individuals who climbed most this cycle. We have Oluwatosin Ojewala from Afe Babalola University, jumped 140 spots. We have Babatunde Bamidele Raji from Bowen, up by 86, and then Adetunji Adefila up by 80. If you're not on this list yet, that's not a verdict. It's just it's an invitation. I'm just trying to show you that you can do it, we can all do it. And yes, full transparency. I thought someone was going to talk about this or someone was going to spot this because I also spotted my own name on this leaderboard too, under the unassigned, if you can say it. So I'm holding myself to the same bar that I'm asking of you. Let me also mention here that among the unassigned are the participants who never registered, okay? And their details are not captured other than the institutions that they fall under. So if you had not registered, you probably might see your name on that is where you are falling actually, because you're not registering means that you don't have your details captured under the right institutions that you're supposed to be. So if you haven't done that, or if you haven't registered, but you're already enrolled and you're moving along in the course, we will need you to do that so that your detail is well captured under your institution accordingly. Now, here's the thing that I want everybody to know. This is a self-paced program. Nobody's gonna chase you through materials. I mean, that's a future, all right, and it's not a bug. The future, it's self-paced. You can do this at your own leisure. You control your own pace, but it also means the only person between you and the progress is actually you, unfortunately. So if you look at the number, 152 participants haven't opened a single module yet. 186 of us are sitting between 75 and 99%. So close to be done, if you ask me. And if that is you, I will want to say well done. And so if you can drop in the chat one thing that you think has been keeping you from logging in, if there is that one thing that you think has been the major factor that's been keeping you up from logging in, maybe it's time, maybe the content, or are you experiencing any technical issue? Whatever it is, anything, I want you to, I want you to know so we can, I would love to know that. And if you can drop that in the chat, so we can see how we can assist to fix it. Whether it's the content, or maybe you are having some technical issues, or you're just so busy, it's time on your side and all that. Whatever it is, just feel free and drop it in the chat. The self-paced format means you can do 20 minutes on a lunch break or a full module if you want on a Saturday morning, for example. Whatever fits your week. It only works if you show up. And so here's my hacks. Pick one module right after this call and try to finish it up as soon as you can. And last thing, we are moving from a broad rollout into a more hands-on phase in the coming week. So starting soon, we will be engaging institutions one-on-one. We'll be scheduling actual visits to institutions. Sitting down with your coordinators and walking through the specifics as it relates to each institution and putting all we have been learning into practicals at the individual institutional level. So as I close, three things. We had 38% average progress with real leaders emerging. This is your program, okay? So, it's your program to move at your own pace. So let's close those gaps, and we're coming to you directly in the weeks ahead. Let me say thanks for being here, and let's get that number up as soon as we can, and see you on the leaderboard. Over to you now, Tulu. So you can bring in our facilitator for today's webinar.
Sure. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Just to mention something again, everybody, like you mentioned, is a self-paced program. So please jump on it and, measure up to what needs to be done, even at this stage of the program. Thank you so much once again, sir.
Yeah.
I have the pleasure again this morning, I said, to introduce to us, for those who haven't met him yet, probably you were not in the last webinar. I believe we had a very good time last time. It was real value for our time. We learned a lot and were able to, improve in our knowledge and in our prowess when it comes to cybersecurity. This morning again, we have with us Mr. Ricardo Uribe, Who is excited this morning about that? I wanted to put it in the chat room. I wanted to thank you so much. I wanted to put in the chat room how excited you are this morning. We have Mr. Ricardo Uribe here. For those who have not met him, probably were not in the last webinar we held. Let me just give you a little appetizer about it. Mr. Ricardo Uribe is the Chief Technology Officer at CGNet Services International, based in Mountain View, California. He has over 30 years, that's 3 decades, let me put it in perspective, of experience, when it comes to these topics, when it comes to IT leadership, when it comes to institutional security and, end-to-end IT issues. This morning, we have the pleasure again to host Mr. Ricardo Uribe. And I'm so expectant. I'm so excited to have him here again this morning. I love the calm and the steadiness with which he teaches. You are able to follow and you are able to glean everything that you need to know from his sessions. Thank you so much for being here with us once again, Mr. Ricardo. It's a pleasure to have you once again. And I really look forward to a very great time in this morning's session. Not to flub it so much, I want you to join me this morning, everybody, to make welcome Mr. Ricardo Uribe for the 4th webinar in the series of webinars that we are having in the CyberSecure Nigeria program. Thank you so much. You're welcome. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you, Tolu. And thank you for those words. That's a high bar that I need to live to. So we'll see what happens in the next hour or so. And thank you everyone for joining, taking time of your day. This takes time. And as Mr. Inca was saying that, you have to go through the modules and pace yourself, and you have to do the quizzes and things like that. It does take time, but the knowledge that you get, the ideas that you get, that is worth a lot. I'm just gonna start my presentation and want to say that that now that the World Cup is over, we should have more time in our lives. And I said as an experience, because for the last month and a half, I was not very productive. My boss was like giving me the bad eye. But that's because we were watching soccer every day. And in my office, there's one TV, and the TV only gets used once every 4 years. So that TV was happy that we turned it on for a few games. Anyway, so talking about today's module is about cybersecurity, but in the institution. What the institutions can do, what the IT groups can do. And in the past, we have said that cybersecurity is not only IT, is everyone. Everyone has a little piece of it, and we all have to move it forward to not only make the institution secure, and by the way, and the second one is to make ourselves secure. We learn all these practices. We learn about malware, phishing, multi-factor authentication, all these things that we apply to this institution, we should apply to ourselves. There's no reason why we should be lax with our own data, because this is our own data. And when we get hacked, we suffer. As an institution will suffer as well to that. So a lot of the things that we learn, we should apply to ourselves. We went through 3 modules before. The first module in the cyber hygiene, we learned some basic information about malware, multi-factor authentication or 2-factor authentication to make ourselves secure, about phishing. And then in module 2, we learn about the data protection and privacy. And one of the things that I mentioned in module 3 that I learned from module 2 is this idea of the CIA triad, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, which it colors how the institution should protect their data and how we are stewards of that data as well. And we should protect that data because that's how our projects, our research, our institution, that's their work, that's the day to day, and we need to protect those things. In module 3, we talk about incident response and reporting, and it's talking about everyone's role. Um, you know, trying to figure out when there's an incident, what to do when it's an incident. We talk about also confidentiality when there's an incident because we don't wanna do a lot of gossip, and we wanted to make sure that the group that is working in the cyber incident have enough information to give to everyone and true information as well. And we went talk about this idea of well, in the module 3 they call it RACI, I call it RACI, which is this idea that is a responsible group, but there's only one accountable person, and there's also consulted, and there's information about it. And we talk about those things, and then we hope that um, the institutions that perhaps don't have such a high level of cybersecurity yet, can start giving an idea of where they need to do to move forward, to have a stronger mandate on cybersecurity. It's all important for everyone. And today is about institutional cybersecurity. We'll be talking about a little bit of backups. We're going to be touching in what we touched in previous modules, but we need to see this from the part of having a strong ICT group and having different areas that the group needs to worry about to protect um, when either there's an incident or we will talk about security frameworks, which I think is the biggest thing that we're going to be talking today. Um, and so that from what from what the institution can do. So these are ideas. I encourage everyone, of course, go through the module. There's 9 different areas in that module. And it, it goes really quick. You pay attention and you get all these ideas. You get, oh no, this is what we need to do, or this is where we should be going towards, and to increase our cybersecurity awareness. So today we'll talk about identity management and access control. Then we move to network security, and this is like fundamentals. There's way more on the network security as well, because the network is an essential part of make our institutions secure besides ourselves. There's also endpoint protection and device management. This is your cell phone, your laptop, your tablet, all these things that are part of but they're going to be connected to that network. And then we'll give you some principles on backup and disaster recovery. Then we're going to move to patch management and vulnerability. That ties a little bit with number 3, with endpoint protection and device management. This is more on the network, on the software side. Then some security policies. We're going to touch on a few of them. They're important to have a basic amount of policies that will help everyone understand, what everyone's role is. To me, the most important part is the introduction of the cybersecurity frameworks. There is a lot of information out in the internet of how to, I'm sorry, there's a lot of information that different organizations have put out to make everyone else secure. There's a lot of that money that has been put into creating these frameworks. And there are different frameworks. People can choose whatever they want to. I'm going to be talking more about this. We'll talk a little bit about risk management because risk management colors some of our decisions, for example, on backups. And also logging and monitoring because that will also helps when we do investigations and forensics. And I can tell you that many times where people forget to do the login and then there's none, and it's very hard to figure out what happened. So here we go. Everyone ready? I am. All right. So I call it identity management and access control, uh, mainly because you need identity management first. So identity management is think of the onboarding of a user. So what login name, what credentials you're gonna be give into that. So you create a user, that persona into it. And then once you create that, then you assign the controls. You assign the permissions where that person is going to do. So if it's a student, maybe we'll have access to the learning management process. It will get access to where to pay, where to see the grades, where to get that part. But if the person is a staff member, so it's a staff member in what area, maybe is in the bursary or is in a different group. So it gets assigned different permissions depending on where that person is going to be doing for. Same with professors and faculty. So some of the things here that is important, and it shows in the maturity of how the organization onboards a user, is that those controls, those access controls are given as part of a group, not so usually people tend to be very fast to just give permissions to the user. And then when the user gets moved around and everything, people don't look at those permissions. But what is important here is that they're actually in the access controls, they're actually groups. So there's a group for users that are students, faculty, um, fellows. So you give permissions to the group and then you add the user to the group. That makes it easier for auditing. That makes it easier to assign permissions to that group to be access new systems, whatever it is. But so access and control is where everything starts. So it starts with the creation of the access control of the user, what permissions we give them, where can be accessed. From time to time, the user, it depends of the trajectory of the user where it gets moved from one section to another. So we have role management. And that's what the access control help us with, manage those accesses and be able to add access and remove access whenever we need to. Okay. And we forget. People forget because we're so busy and we forget to remove permissions that people don't need into that. We can add it because then the user has been asking for it, but then the user usually don't say, "Oh, remove me from this part." But it's the job of the institution, the people that is managing this onboarding, that is managing the life cycle of a user, to be able to identify what groups this person belongs to, and then add and remove when changes happen. And then, even more important, when we do the offboarding and maybe the student graduate, um, then to actually disable that user and eventually delete the user for that. Again, this is one of the biggest holes in cybersecurity is when we forget that the user is no longer in the institution and we forget to disable that account that is floating around is actually invisible, but hackers will find it. And then they'll try to break because perhaps that account is no longer being protected by different areas that it was protected before. So we need to try to always follow the circle, in this case, to have the information to deactivate. A lot of the times at the account creation, we'll know when that person is going to leave too. So we probably will also set it up so after 4 years or when the contract expire or whatever happens, then the system will deactivate. But we do have to do auditings from time to time to make sure that the people that we have onboarded are the correct people at the moment, and we offboard people when it's needed, and then the change management. So we have talked about before when we create users, we have to have a strong passwords. I said that strong passwords is usually 15, 16 characters or more, because that takes hundreds of years to break. And even better if we can have something that will prevent phishers from try to guess those passwords, and to have the multi-factor authentication, that is the digits that you put in, the 4, 6, 8 digits that sometimes you put in. Or if you use an authenticator, then it'll go to your cell phone, and then you have to say, yes, it was me who's logging, please allow me in, right? We don't want to see SMS text in general. I know that that still happen. And there is a lot of organizations that haven't been able to make the leap from multi-factor authentication that comes via text to comes to an authenticator, or to use passkeys. But we always try to look for the strongest one. So the strongest will be an authenticator or a passkey whenever possible. I'm not sure we have introduced the principle of the single sign-on, and this happens in institutions. And the whole idea is that once you log in your computer, the computer has authenticated you for this. So um, the the part of the single sign-on is once you sign in into one time, then you're able to access all the different services that the institution is offering you, either because you already signed one time or you have to sign in again with one set of credentials. With one set of credentials, you have access to all this. So that will prevent people to have multiple credentials, and not only that, but also prevents them from or helps them to not reuse passwords and have different password, have the same password in different systems. So, and also from the IT side, it helps us to figure out what systems the person have access to. It is hopefully better that in institution the single sign-on idea happens, because that will make it easier for everyone to access the services that we do. The other thing, and I think we have talked about this, is an account lockout policies. Mainly what it is um, hackers, for example, or ourselves, sometimes we forget our passwords and we try and try and try. So usually the system should be configured, the system that is doing the authentication of the user, the credentials, should be able to say, hey, you tried 3 times, hold on, I'm gonna wait a minute, wait 3 minutes, and then try again. Okay, this is no difference than on your mobile. If you try, your mobile says you have tried too many times. And sometimes even if you try too many times, it will wipe out the mobile. We don't want that. But the account lockout policy prevents the brute force attacks, brute force. So that's mean, people use hackers use dictionaries. They have a list of millions of passwords that they know that people have used, and they will try those passwords and then try. So when we have the local policies, that means that the system will say, you know what, you try 4 times, I'm gonna give you a timeout. You try 10 times, I'm gonna lock you out, and then an administrator have to take a look into it and then unlock it. And that's a very important tool. On the side of this slide, we also see best practices, and um, I wanna just call out one of the most important ones that I think myself, which is the reviews. Um, eh, People um, do that manage systems. So, for example, if you are the administrator of the learning management system, you do have to see what kind of permissions have on that system. For example, the basic permission is to access, but there's people that have access to create the courses, and there's people that have access to update the software, right? Those permissions that have the administrator rights, those needs to be reviewed every quarter or every 6 months at least. You need to review who has permissions. The amount of things that people move around, you do have to, from time to time, take a look and say, ask for a list of who has permissions to change software, to update software, to delete areas, right? You need to look into those things. I'm gonna move to the next slide. So I just talked about a little bit of the access control. So there's access controls for students, faculty, administrators, IT administrators, as many as you need to be able to separate where the people and what role they have. And that's what the access control will help you out with. And just to finish this idea, there is one thing that I want to call out, or two things actually, which is at the bottom left of this slide, that we always need to use the principle of the least privilege, meaning that users, and this happens a lot to the IT administrators and the people living in the IT, is that you should only be given roles or access for the work that you need to do. Do you don't need more? If you don't need more, then you should not be given those roles for that. And this will actually help you, because that way you don't get in trouble for doing something that wasn't in your scope, and it helped the administrators as well, the IT people that are overseeing this, to say, okay, no, people have only the roles that they need, and they are part of the groups that they need, and no more into that. And then tied to that is the role-based access control, and this has been around for many years, but finally, systems are using it more. Finally, systems have figured out that hackers are always looking for the people that have some type of access privilege, and usually those people have a lot of privilege. So finally, they're telling, they're configuring their software to tell the administrators, no, 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 you need to figure out, there's only one or two people that should have access to the whole system, but the the rest of the people should have their controls by the roles that they do. So the role-based access control. Sometimes this is a pain, especially for people like me that have been around for many years and it used to have a lot of control, a lot of access, but this is worth it. And this is what protects us on the back end, for all of us. All right, so saying all that, we're gonna move to the second part, which is the network security. And many people don't think about how networking in computer can complicated it can get. And especially in a big campus in a university or a research institution that has many buildings, it can get very difficult to manage. But there are certain areas that we need to look into it. So to me, one of the most important parts is at the bottom of this slide, the network segmentation. And I'm gonna go into some of this slide. There's a lot of information here, but in the network segmentation, we wanna be able. There's a principle called VLAN, virtual LANs or virtual networks. We wanna be able to say, okay, the systems that are very important that should only be accessed by administrators, those systems live in this part of the network and can only be accessed by these people, and students can even see them. You cannot, if you look in your network, so the people that are very advanced in networking, they can try to search and they can try to sniff, what's in the network. They won't be able to see it. That is because that area has been segmented. This also works very well where we have Wi-Fi and we have what we call the corporate network and the guest network. So you'll see, you probably see in your institution, you'll see your student network on Wi-Fi, and you see your administrator network, and you might see your guest network Wi-Fi. And each one is segmented, meaning that they cannot see each other. You can connect if you have the credentials, but you cannot see each other. If you can see each other, then the segmentation is not done correctly. And that increases security risk, because then that means that you are allowing guests to see servers, to see services that they shouldn't be access to. And if you allow a guest to do that, then you can allow a hacker to go by and then connect to it. And then we try to break into the system. So we try to do the segmentation that goes with Wi-Fi. And we always use firewalls. And I mentioned firewalls in the last module, which is usually it's an appliance, it's a device. It could be a virtual device also, that is in the network, where all this what it does, it protects these networks are segmented. It adds a level of protection. It looks at everything that happens and decides if you can see it or you cannot. And not only if you can see it, if you can go to a service, but I will also, depending on how advanced the firewall is, it can also monitor what the data that is going through it. And it can stop, for example, viruses to go through. Or it can stop hackers from trying to see what's on the network and only show you what is allowed to see on the network. So firewalls are very important, and um, they're basic firewalls, but in an institution you need a very strong firewalls, and these devices may cost a lot of dollars, $20,000, $50,000, because they are very important depending on the services that they do. Firewalls also stop hackers to come in from the internet. They also stop or only allows people, to access what they need to. And there is, we call ports. So when you browse on your browser, you go to a website, usually that's port 443. I'm saying this is very geeky, but the firewall deals with these things. And what allows you to access is the firewall. And the firewall may connect to the access management system to try to identify who you are and try to direct you where you're going to. So on the right side of the slide, we go common threads. So unauthorized access, and the firewall is what tries to stop those things. network sniffing, and this used to be a very specialized software. In the past, you have to pay for it. Now they have open free software where you can connect your laptop into your network, and then you can see what's happening in that network. You can see every single, they call packets, going back and forth and make sense of it. This is why when we go to cyber cafes or we go to places where where it's an open system, these network sniffings can see what's happening. And this is why they can see passwords going by. And it's very easy, these days it's very easy to configure to do that. So this is with if we have good network hardware, these network sniffings will be also identified, and eventually they can be shut down eventually, right? And then we talk about the lateral movement, which is the segmentation of the networks. So firewalls, network segmentation, and make sure that your Wi-Fi is configured with network segmentation, that you only allow access to the corporate network or the organization's network for faculty, for administrators, for whatever it is. So those areas are very important. Again, these are fundamentals from the institutions that they have to design these things this way. They cannot just get a network and then put devices on it and then hope for the best. And that's not how it should work. That's how it was 20 years ago, or more. But these days, you really need to do a well-designed network to make it not only secure, but also that works fast enough for this. I talk about that there are devices or software that can look into the network, that can look at see if there's network sniffers. Well, so there are software or devices that you can install that will also monitor the traffic that's going through the network. So network traffic monitors, and they capture what's going on, and then they can prevent problems. They can shut down access. They can alert us. They can do logs. They can do all these things. The one system that comes to mind is called Dark Trace. The once you put in the network and you configure it with all the different segmentations, with all the different VLANs, it will actually tell you when a person is going to a site that has malicious information, for example, or malicious malware, and it will block that person. It will block the access to those sites. Same thing coming in, it will block it. Or if a person is trying to log in from different areas, from different parts of the country, it will block it, or it will log it to it. There is a lot of this software around is for big institutions with big networks that are 100% worth it. They give a lot of data. We're gonna talk about logging at the end, towards the end, but this is where we want to do this. And of course, under best practice, regular firmware updates. So usually on network devices, you do the software update. That software is usually called firmware. And that needs to be updated as soon as they come out, because hackers are always trying to break into these systems as well. Then another part that the institution needs to manage is what we call the endpoint protection. An endpoint is your laptop or is your server, is a mobile, is a, um, a, a tablet, for example. And we have touched on this before. When you also need to, the same way you protect the network by having this network not sniffers, but network protection software, the firewalls. You also need to protect your computers, and for that, we do this by protect from malware and other areas, but we do this by installing either an antivirus, which these days has morphed more into what we call the endpoint detection and response software, which it should be the standard um, for everyone in an institution to have an EDR, endpoint detection and response. So all the servers should have something like this. All the major laptops should have something like this. And the difference between the antivirus and the endpoint is that the antivirus is usually is a lower level security that looks at patterns of malware, but it's something that they have seen before and they have a database, and so they can compare things into it. And the endpoint detection goes a step further, and they look for patterns of what the software is doing. If the software is trying to access things that usually software shouldn't be doing it, then the endpoint detection will detect and then alert or block it. More important, and this is what is highly important to have an endpoint detection, is that it will tell you how this happens, how that software, that malware came into being into that system. Was it uploaded or downloaded from a website? Was USB thumb drive? Where did it came from? Did it came from the network? So the endpoint detection really is important for uh, doing investigations into that. So listen, if you cannot have it in every device, at least your servers, your most important real estate in your network should have all this part. We have talked about data encryption, and we have talked about data encryption in the sense of um, having your laptops or your drives encrypted in the laptops, or even in the servers. These days, encryption. There used to be a time where data encryption you have to pay for it. Now it comes with the software, and some software does it by default. Some you have to do it. But this is also very basic that every device around should have data encryption for that. And also we do patch management, and we're gonna be talking about, I think it's on coming up on 5, where as we talk about updating the network devices, the firmware, it's very important to update your operating systems, your Windows, your Mac, your Androids. Those, patches come all the time, or at least every month on Patch Tuesday for some of these things. Your browsers, you know. But the key here is that is the institution that commands that patch management. It's not leaving it to everyone to do it themselves, but it's configuring these laptops, these servers, so the patch happens, or they have a centralized software that patches into that. We'll go into that in a minute for that. And of course, everything starts with an asset inventory. And this is so important. We'll see this when we look into frameworks. Uh, the institution needs to know what it has. It needs to know what servers it has, what laptops it has, what desktops, what points of sales are, those things the scanners, all those things, they all need to be part of this inventory, because without it, we don't know what to patch and where to patch it and when it's time to get a new one, because hardware has a time to they might live 3, 5, 10 years, but they need to be replaced mainly because their hardware is they cannot be updated anymore. So new security problems will come up. So having the asset inventory, by the way, this is also not easy to do. But once you start going, it gets better with your processes. Um, so that is very important. The other part, and I suspect that many of you have seen this, is bring your own device policies. And this is when organizations allow their staff or their students to bring their own laptops to be connected to the network, to be connected to things. But we need to be careful with that. We have talked before about having laptops coming into your network and connect maybe with malware and having infected the network. Um, so with the BYOD policies, it is okay to do that, but you have to have a policy. What is the expectation of that equipment coming into campus? And what kind of services are we giving to that part, and what type of access, and how we're going to deal with problems on that. And we'll talk about this during policies. And because a lot of these devices will get lost one way or another, we usually, if it is encrypted, then we're highly protected because breaking those encryptions are really difficult. But if you can wipe out remotely, even better. And this happens a lot on laptops and mobiles, where from the administration side, from the access controls, we can see, we can send if the device is on the network, and usually they would be one way or another, then we can send signals to say either wipe the whole device or wipe the data that is being managed uh, for this part. Then we're gonna go into backups, and this one is also uh, very, they're all important, but we talk about backups during module 3 because that will help us with disaster recovery after an incident that may have happened. But there is a lot of experience from many, many years about how backups should work. There is a lot of theory behind it as well. But there's two concepts that we want you to understand about data backup. The first one, those two concepts are at the bottom right of the slide. The first one is the recovery time objective, and this is the time once there has been an incident, sorry, and it has been decided that the server or the laptop, whatever, needs to be restored from a backup, then how long it will take to do that restore, or how fast we need to get to do that restore. One example is, and this is hopefully this is very extreme and never happens, but in the LMS system, if you need to, this is a very important system that needs to be up, almost 24/7. So for every system, you have a recovery time objective. And you say, if there has been an incident, I keep saying accident, an incident, um, then the recovery time objective is what you tell people, say, okay, this should be restored as soon as possible within 24 hours or within 8 hours. You set the time for that because it's so important. And then the second concept is the recovery point objective. And this is the difficult part is like, how much data are you willing to lose when you do that recovery? So if you do backups every day, only once a day, then you can only do a recovery point objective of 1 day. So if something happens today, that means that your recovery point objective is a day, so you can only restore from yesterday. But there are systems that needs to be backed up every hour, or every half an hour, or every 10 minutes. There are those type of systems. So whatever it is between the recovery time objective and the recovery point objective, where you figure out how you treat those systems, if it's the LMS, if it's the the system where the accounting system, the human resource systems, how fast they need to be recovered and how much data is acceptable to lose, how much you can rebuild into it. And that will, by you having those two uh, areas, those two questions answered, then you can figure out how to do your backups, how often you do the backups, where do you restore, how all the ideas behind on backups and restores. And of course, the restore is what helps us with disaster recovery. We talked about this in a previous module. So there are many strategies on backups, and they change on what systems you have, and they change on what access, what funds you have, because backups, you can do it uh, cheaply, but also the best backups will also cost some amount of money. But in here we talk about the 3-2-1 rule, which is you keep 3 copies of the data. 3 copies. Once you back up, you create three copies. But 2 of those copies are in different media. That means that if there's a fire, and different media in different places too. If there's a fire and destroys one of those, at least you have backup on in the other building, for example. If one gets compromised, there's the other one. And then the one will be keeping data offsite, usually in the cloud. To tell you the truth, these days, a lot of the backups are kept in the cloud, or they kept locally for maybe a week, and then they move to the cloud. Because usually when you restore, you can restore quickly within the data locally within 1 day, for example. If all the data is in the cloud and you have to restore a server, that might take you longer because you have to bring that data down, and depends how fast your internet is. It will take. But so again, there is many ways to do the backup. And usually, but the other thing about backup and something that's happening lately is the idea of doing differential backups. And for those of you uh, that use Microsoft 365 or Google Workspace, and you go and do live documents where the document is open and it's been saved in the cloud, that means that every change that you do in that document is actually backed up. And that's actually called a differential. So usually the system will do a backup of the whole document once, and then it just do the differential, what changes. And that's how it can keep track of what and keep a history of things. And if you need to restore, then you can restore on what change you want to restore to that. Now be careful, because this is only about most of these systems like Office 365 or Google. If you delete the data, if you delete the file, then you only have a limited amount of time to restore. It's usually 30 days. When we're talking about financial systems, accounting systems, they're probably under different sets of rules. And so data has to be kept even once it gets deleted, for example, you have to have backup for 7 years or 10 years, whatever the standard is, you have to deal with those things. So you need to understand that not only how fast you need to back up, how much data are you willing to lose, but also for how long you need to keep those backups around. And that's you know every system will have a different type of information about it. So we talk about how often you back up, what type of data that you back up. So if it's a critical system, you back up every hour or continuously. If it's a standard data, if it's a file that you're working maybe, then the system just back it up once a day. So that means that if you delete that file, then you can restore it from the previous day. Or if you make a change and it wasn't good, then all you have to do is from the last backup. And there is also the concept of archives on this, and this works very well where you have to keep data for a very long time. And usually, if you keep data for 7 years, it becomes very expensive to keep that data on servers in your system. So usually that data gets moved to the cloud, and you said that also costs money. But fortunately, the in the cloud they have different types of storage, and you can move data into very cheap storage systems where they'll protect the data there, and they'll tell you this is cheap because if you want the data, it's gonna take you 10 more minutes, or it's gonna take you half an hour what usually will take, or it might take it will take a little bit longer. So they're charging you less for that storage, but because they can promise that the data is secure, but it will take you longer. And that's okay. If you're restoring from a 5-year data, actually means that you've explored an investigation or something, and you don't need to be restored. That time objective is not as fast because it's something that you're doing. So there's changes where the data is. As what I'm saying is backups, there's a lot of this could be a whole course on backups. The same thing as it could be a whole course on networking. But don't take this lightly, please. The backups are as important. We talk in module 3 why this is important. How many of us have not deleted something and wish we had a backup, especially when there is a presentation the next day. So definitely, systems have improved so much that uh, backups are almost instantly. Restores may take a little bit longer. And not only what I just said, add to that you need to restore every so often. You need to make sure that whatever you're backing up, the integrity of it can be restored. Okay. And we talk also in the past about this. From time to time, every quarter, every 6 months, you need to test that you can actually restore data. Okay. If that's not working, then that needs to be fixed. And it's better fixed now that you know it than when there's an emergency. When there's an emergency, then you cannot fix it. It's too late. We talk about vulnerability. We talk about patch management in the section 3. But here, I'm gonna add more to it, which is this idea of vulnerability and what patch management can do. So you've seen often that if you have a Windows machine, you see that it's asking you every so often to update. And the reason is because they're always discovering either not only because they want to add more features, but more important, they want to fix areas that they did not know when the software was released, that they were having some security. So we want to prevent those vulnerabilities in our systems by doing the patch, by doing the upgrade of the software. I know from that sometimes the software has been purchased and perhaps you purchased at one time and you did not want to upgrade, you did not buy a subscription. So usually that software has a time, usually a year, where they'll give you free patches, and then after that is unpatched. And then new vulnerabilities will be found on that software. So you need to be careful with that type of subscriptions or what type of purchases. You always need to be able to update your software, not to use outdated software. People, this is why also some mobiles devices will come useless, because eventually the system will say, your device is too old. We cannot patch that anymore. Therefore, we're not going to support it, and therefore you cannot access the services, for example. And it's a sad part, but that's the only way to manage the vulnerability or the risk, and we're going to go into risk very soon. And I know I need to go a little bit faster on this part, but anyway, so outdated software, misconfigurations, and not having the right processes to update software, those create the vulnerability in the institution. How do we deal with this? Well, we deal by having a patch deployment, patch management, a structured policy well laid out. Well, we say every so often we're going to patch, or we're going to patch as soon as something comes out. We're going to prioritize patches on our servers, on our main systems, and then we go into the laptops or devices. And not only that, then we do regular scanning, and where there is software that you can use to scan your network, and then it will find the devices on that network, and they will scan that device to see if it has been patched, if there's a vulnerability. Some of them it will try to break into it, depends on what type of scanning has been happening. But all these ideas have to happen. And this goes why you need an inventory, okay? Because you need to have control of all these systems. You cannot have outdated systems in your network. So best practices, automate the process, either have software to push the patches to the servers, or configure the servers to patch every month or as often as the policy says. Prioritize by severity. Always log, and we'll talk about this. For some of the systems, you need to test the patch, because a patch can have side effects, can introduce. This happens from time to time. Not happens every time, but maybe once a year or twice a year, they might introduce a patch that will break something else, and they'll do an emergency. But this is why on important systems you have to test those patches, so you have to wait a little bit longer. And establish a cadence how often you're gonna patch into that. And there's something called a 0-day patch, which is there are patches that are so urgent that they're kind of off cycle. For some reason, a vulnerability is so big that has been found that the organization that owns the software, that produces the software, will do a 0-day patch. And those are the most important patches that you need to do. And let me tell you something on patching. With artificial intelligence and the latest versions of artificial intelligence, Microsoft, Apple, Adobe, Google, all these things have been throwing AI into their software to try to improve the security on their software. And this is why in the last 2 months, a company like Microsoft has issued like 700 patches for their software because of AI. So fortunately, supposedly only those companies have access to that type of AI. We hope the hackers don't have access to that. I'm going to go really quick through this. But we want the institutions to have some policies about security, about how to use the network, how to do the backup, what the expectations are, what happens when you bring your device. So the basic policy is what we call the acceptable use policy. And this is the policy where the institution probably will say, here, we're giving you internet, we give you access to this, but this is what you need, this is what also you need to do. Okay, you need to browse your internet, in a way that is not going to break or make it slower. You're not going to go to sites, gambling or whatever, that are not related to the work of the institution. You're going to keep a long password, even though on number 4 we talk about password authentication, but usually those things can be in the acceptable use policy. But it will outline the expectations not only from the institution but also from the user. So it's a both. It's always both ways. In the data protection policy, think of it as a data retention policy. It will say, okay, this is how the system, how we, as an organization, protect our data, and this is what you should do to protect the data to help us out. This is how often we do backups. This is how often we retain those backups. And this is what happens when a person leaves, or what happens with the data, how often we should go, how to uh, destroy that data, for example. There could be a policy on incident response. We talk about that in the module 3 as well. And that policy will outline who is first, what everyone role is when there is a cybersecurity, what the communications group does, what the data security people does, what the IT restoring group does. It manages all that part, and it gives you an outline. And then we talk about the bring your own device. And again, if you have that type of idea of letting people bring your own devices into your network, then you have to have a BYOD policy, and it will outline why we're doing this and what you should do to allow that, to fix or to clean that computer. What areas can you access? For example, can you access the corporate network, the official network, if you're bringing your own devices? Whatever it is, access to printers, to the Wi-Fi, all those things are managed here. The basic one, the acceptable use policy. And usually it could be that a lot of this that you see here, these policies, are already added into the acceptable use policy for that. But again, it protects the institution and it protects you because now you know how often backups are, for example, and what your role is into protecting data for all this. We talk about governance, also module 3, a little bit of this, and where the governance comes with, what roles people have into accessing data, protecting the data, backups and all that. And in cybersecurity, we talk about either a chief information, chief technology, but these days they also have a chief information security officers, the CISO. And this is a high level person that understands security, and it will guide the institution to have policies on cybersecurity, and it has a whole infrastructure on security, have the IT security team behind it. So it's not one person doing the whole thing, but there's actually a team. And of course, in bigger institutions, then you have staff members in different areas, in different colleges, where they're part of the group where the information officer can say, guys, help me out, do this, or please help me promote this within your group. So they act as a bridge, and they're the local leaders for IT in different groups. These people are very important. These are very helpful people. Without them, it will become very hard to manage to put policies, to put security into place, because some institutions are very large, and we need those people, the coordinators, to help us out to do that. And saying all that, and I will go to the cybersecurity frameworks, and I talked this at the beginning of my talk, and I want if everything that I have talked about, policies and security, backups, networking, access controls, well, everything is in these security frameworks. And there are different institutions that have different frameworks, different security frameworks. And there's two that I'm showing you here. I'm going to talk about the third one, which is called the CIS, or the Center for Internet Security. Okay, so a framework, so it just gives you a blueprint of security. It'll tell you what areas or how you should handle, or what ideas you should have on how to handle security in an organization, where to start, what policies, how's your backup. Okay, it doesn't tell you that your backup has to be 3-2-1, but it tells you that you have to have a backup and you have to have some security. You have your RTO. It'll tell you those things. You'll have this framework into that. At the end of the day, the whole idea is to give you the structure on your security, communication, and compliance for this. So most organizations will do the framework either from the one that I just said, the CIS, the Center for Internet Security, which has a list of 18 controls. Okay, and the first control is an asset inventory, and then software. Not only the asset is on hardware, but also on software. Okay, so they have 18 controls to do that. And that's one of the basic frameworks that you can get, that you can work on it. There's a lot of free information into that. And I say free because there's also a lot of software that you can hire, or services that you can input the data for these controls, for these frameworks, and then it will guide you what's next, or it'll give you a score, or it'll give you, there's a lot of things behind into these frameworks. Frameworks takes time to go into that. The other framework that we want to work, or that I wanna point out, is the cybersecurity framework from NIST. This is also very common, and they go into it's a 5 different areas. So identify, again, assets. I said it before. You need to know what you have. Okay. Without that, the second area will be protect. What to protect: data, hardware, your network. How to detect, to have the proper tools for detection of problems, to that. How to respond, the policies, and how to recover. So it's very easy to me to say is identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. This takes time. And the framework helps you put your mind into it, and then start with the asset and where you're going. Some of this will have, like I said, a quiz to try to analyze where you are in this and what you need to do. For those institutions that use the ISO, and they already have some type of ISO certifications, of course, there's an ISO on security. This is the 27001 ISO. Okay. You can also go into the certification. This is something that takes 3-4 years. This is not easy. This is why we said, start with something basic. Start with the NIST one, or the CIF one. And then once you get into some type of maturity and you want to go through the certification, then you can adopt the ISO 27001. Of course, once you get certified, you have to maintain that certification. That means that all that structure that you put in, you need to keep maintaining it. All those policies you have to update. You have to do that. Not only with the ISO, you have to do it with the NIST. You also have to review all these things into that. But for those of you that may want to that like cybersecurity. There is a lot of people that for this is a passion. Some people are here. The frameworks are a way of living, and when we go into consulting, for example, one of the first questions is what framework do you use for cybersecurity? And it just all depends what's best for that organization. There's not an easy answer for everyone. It just depends on what's best for the organization. I would say the ISO one is the top level one that again, those organizations that prefer to have certifications, but it does takes time to do this. I'm just gonna skip. Well, let me just talk about this really quick. We talk about the NEST, the identify, protect, detect, respond. Seems very simple to do these things. The hardest part is to do the asset inventory, especially in a big organization. But once you have that, I think you have a very good chance to move to the next ones to do that. There is services, there is consultancies, there is software. There's all type of tools that will help you out in these frameworks. You don't have to do that alone. There's ways to help you out. There's usually a group of people that work on this. There's assessments like the slide says, and self-assessments to do this. But this will show a level of maturity for the organizations to say this is the framework that we follow, and this is how we improve on this framework, how to make it better. Or this breaks the framework. We cannot do this because it will break the framework, but we are committed to a framework, security framework. Okay, this is not something that just came up. It's been around for a long time, and this is because people have had experiences in the past, and this is how these frameworks came into place from a lot of experience and government experience too. Then risk management, and this one sounds easy as well, but it's not. And risk is how we evaluate a potential for loss of money, time, um, for loss of the well-being of an institution, the goodwill of an institution. So in risk, we talk about what's the threat, what's happening, and then what's the impact of that risk. And the type of risk, it could be financial, reputational, and we talk about this also in the previous module. And this is the reputational also is very hard to gain again, takes time. Operational, and the fourth one that is not here, which is also legal risk. So every time we make decisions in cybersecurity, or actually not lies, but we actually talk about what's the risk, what's the risk of not patching, what's the risk of not doing network segmentations, what's the risk of or what's the risk of doing MFA, even multi-factor authentication, right? So we go into those things. We assess what's the likelihood of something happening once we implement something or we go to that risk. And we'll go into some strategies in a second, but usually, identify assets in the risk management process. We identify what's the threats, and for example, will be a firewall. And would what's the risk of not updating the firewall and not keeping what will happen? And if you're not updating the firewall, then the risk is that most likely new vulnerabilities will come up and it will be exploited. And then what happened there is it means the firewall become useless and it will not protect the network, and then we'll have a problem of reputation and operational loss, for example, into that. So it's worth it to update, and how much to update, how much money we're gonna pay, whatever it is, we go into the risk in vulnerability. And there are ways to avoid risk, and there usually there's also there are times where we have to live with that risk. So there's about 4 ways to mitigate risk. The easiest one is avoidance, and avoidance doesn't mean let's not look at it. It means that if we identify something that is that has a risk and it has a high potential, we, we are this is then we either figure out, do we really need that device? Is that device in the network, that software, that server, is it needed? And believe it or not, many times we find servers that have not been updated in a long time. This goes into even web servers. This happens a lot with web servers. Web servers that haven't been updated. And the truth is, perhaps no one visits that server anymore. But because that server hasn't been patched, there's a risk there. There's a reputational risk, right? Because that website is attached to the institution. Well, perhaps sometimes the best way to mitigate with that risk is to take the website down because no one's using it, no one's looking at it, no one's promoting it, no one's doing anything to it. So that's one way. The other one is to transfer the risk, and this happens all the time where we might have an accounting system in our network, and there's a risk because managing a system that big, you have to have backups, you have to have disaster recovery, you have to be able to patch it and patch it in a way that doesn't break it. You have all these risks. Well, sometimes it's best to transfer that risk to a service. Perhaps a third party array is offering to do the same type of accounting system in the cloud. In United States, for example, we use QuickBooks, and QuickBooks used to be a software in a computer. They don't sell that anymore. Now it's all in the cloud, and that took the risk from people. Now they took the risk, and they're the ones that have to have the backups, that have the patches, that have to make it 24/7 app. They have the service level agreements. So many times it's best to contract out and move that risk to a third party. Other times you have to reduce it. So again, I go back to the website. If the website, a lot of websites use WordPress, is the name of the content management system. And WordPress uses plugins to add new features for it. Well, plugins like people develop these plugins all the time, but they don't look into the security and they open a lot of holes into WordPress. Okay, well, we know that WordPress can introduce a lot of vulnerabilities into our website, but we need the website. We cannot avoid the website. So either we transfer or we implement controls like every week, or we look at the plugins and then remove the ones that are not in there, or being able to patch, to have your patch system working, right? So that will decrease your risk on having an impact on your services. And then sometimes we just live with the risk, and this happens also often enough where perhaps the risk of something happening is low, and the potential for impact is also low. Okay, so then we accept the risk. But when we say that we accept the risk, it means the institution accepts the risk. And this is a discussion that is within the institution, within the executive committee in the institution, where those risks will be accepted um, for that. All of this also is being mitigated by having cyber insurance. A lot of organizations have cyber insurance. Cyber insurance can be very expensive, and cyber insurance will protect. Will, like any insurance, will pay out, will help you patch, will help you whatever the cyber insurance needs to do um, uh, to avoid the risk on that part. And finally, guys, I know you guys are tired of listening to me, and I appreciate staying along. This idea of logging is very important. What it means, logging and monitoring. What it means is that um, every system has a way of every change, of logging every change, or logging every alert that will happen. Okay, and by doing logging, by enabling logging, then that will give the IT people an idea of what's happening, what could happen, or what had happened into that. And so, um, it seems basic into it, but it's not, because logs tends to grow and people, right, and occupy a lot of space because every change needs to be logged. But when you have access controls, when you create users, when you delete users, when you change them, same when you patch systems, when you patch your WordPress, all those things needs to be logged one way or another. Okay, systems log in every time you log in into your system, that gets logged, and it gets logged where you log in from, or there was a login attempt that also gets logged. Okay, all those systems that they create a lot of data for that. And in the past, no one looked at this data because it's so much, that you get to the point to say, why are we logging if no one is looking at it, right? These days, there's actually specialized software that will take a look at those logs and will give you alerts, and it will give you ideas of what's happening into that. Uh, the so at the very minimum, just log and keep those logs for a period of time. Some people keep them from 6 months to a year. So that way, if there's an incident, then you can go back and say where this happening at what time, where is it came from, where is the the attack came from. Um, so and then also if you can have funds to buy the software or the service to look into the logs, then that's also highly suggestible, because that's another alert. We always looking for different areas that what's going on. The the IT is so complex, information technology is so complex that whatever in the IT group, the security, we get these alerts. No, then it's always we try to act on it as soon as possible so it doesn't become a big incident. So please, this has happened all the time. I mean, every year we see this where you have the right systems, they're configured, they are well configured, but the logs are not. So it is doing a minimal log, and unfortunately, because people don't want to spend money on buying the space to store the logs, so they skimp on that. But not having the logs is not knowing what's going on day to day, and that's not a good thing. Um, so guys, I talked a lot. I went through a lot, nine areas. For those of you that have not gone through this module, it's 30 minutes. So it'll go really quick. I highly suggest it. For those that wants to increase the security in your institution, look at the frameworks, look at where maybe your institution is already doing a framework, so then you can ask about it and get more information. Backups, networking, all these areas, those are institutional things on security. Those are basic, really, that we have to do, but you have to be at it. You have to have people looking at it, being able to to always be tweaking to increase the security. And you always have to balance security with the usability of the system as well. So thank you everyone. I'll just give back to the master control at IITA.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Ricardo Uribe. Yes, thank you. Please react. Give him a round of applause. Give him a thumbs up. Thank you very much. It's been so much value for the time. I like how you started specifically. You said it is our own data, and when we get hacked, we suffer. And he reminded us also to apply whatever we're learning to ourselves, as we also intend to apply to the institution. So it's been so much said. It took us through the 9 parts, the 9 sections of the 4th module. Again, if you've not done it, if you've not gone through the module, we kindly encourage you to do so. So we'll take questions now. So please let us know if you have any question.
Yeah, just raise your hand.
Please raise
There's a
your
hand
hand.
up. There's a
Yes.
hand up.
So we have Ms. Tope. I'm just going to skip this one. Okay. So yes, Mr. Tope, you have the floor.
You can unmute and speak.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I want to say a big thank you for the lecture this afternoon. But I want to ask a question. You mentioned when we are talking about rules that system-wide rules should be given to 1 or 2 people in the organization. But I want to ask from your experience, who do you think the 1 or 2 people should be? Should it be the head of IT? Should it be management? Should it be the head of the team involved in the system? And I'm asking this because of the high movement of IT staff. So maybe your role doesn't get in the hands of somebody who will easily move away at any point in time. Then number 2, during the course of your presentation too, you mentioned a lot of softwares able to do a lot of things, but you didn't give us examples of those softwares. For instance, I talked about logging, you talked about sniffing and monitoring. Perhaps if you can mention example of those softwares and if they are open source alternatives for them too. Thank you.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Okay,
Yes.
let me help you here. So your first questions about rules and who should be looking at it. You know, in our educational institutions, it becomes harder to enforce some of this because everyone thinks, oh, I have my own budget. I can do whatever I want. I can put things in the cloud myself and I can take care of things myself. And so there are groups that will do that. And those are the things that we try to avoid, or at least try to direct them to the way how it should be. And without them giving total control. There's no need for them to give control. So the rules should be institutionalized. So that means that the framework is institutionalized. So the IT director, in conjunction with the cybersecurity person or the main person, are the ones that are talking about how IT should work in the institution, what the expectations are. Okay. And with enough flexibility, so these groups that can do things alone, and sometimes they're very good groups if they can do it alone, but there is a framework for them as well that that they can be look into it. They can follow how the institution will deploy networking or their own servers into their systems. But it should start somewhere, and maybe the IT director or the chief information officer or technology officer is what should start into that. But with flexibility, of course, because again, people will do that at the end of the day. They have their own money, and they'll think that they can do whatever, and that's not the spirit of how this works. For the tools, when I was talking on the login, there are many tools. One of them, I'm just going to put in the chat, is called Splunk. It's been there for a long time. There is another, Microsoft has one in Azure called Sentinel, for example. SolarWinds have another one, I think it's called CAT tools, and then they used to have someone called Kiwi tools, but you want tools that can not only store the data, but also analyze the data as it's going through. Something as big as Sentinel or Splunk are the ones that you probably look into it. Listen, there are many organizations, in the security firewall, there's a company called Fortinet. They have their own tools. Darktrace have their own tools. Cisco has their own tools. So whatever works best for the network and provides information. So those are two areas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ricardo. I hope that was clear for you, Mr. Tope. Okay. So any other question? Please raise up your...
Do you have questions in the chat room?
Yes.
Shandu?
Yes. So I think there was this question in the chat room, Mr. Ricardo. So I think from Tower to Ayeloton, he was from Funab. He's asking, can you give example of risk mitigation strategy, specifically acceptance, risk acceptance?
That's a good one. I will say, well, risk acceptance. It's by the way, this happens often enough when I'll go back to accounting systems. You might be managing your own Oracle system or SaaS system, or even something more local to that. But upgrades to those systems may cost a lot of money that the institution may not have at the time, or that to do the upgrade also impacts the operational part of the system. Those are the times where the organization may decide to live with the risk. And unfortunately, when those times happens, then those are the times where that risk have to be evaluated every year at least. And the risk is, they might just say, listen, we don't have the money to do this. This system is working very good. Why don't we just make sure that we have backups that we can recover if in case of a problem? But for now, let's just accept the risk that we just cannot do the update and then move on. There are risks that perhaps are not worth to accept. A firewall, for example. Firewalls can be cheap, but can be very expensive. And updating firewalls, you buy service contracts for them for 1, 3, 7 years. And after they expire, then you have to renew those things, and they do cost money. But those are risks that perhaps institutions shouldn't be willing to accept. And because a firewall is so essential to the security of the institution that they need to do that. But again, if they chose to accept the risk, that is a problem, but that's their choosing to do that. So that's one example. I don't know if my friends at IITA have a different one.
No. Absolutely. I think the response was to look at the risks to ensure that it is within the risk tolerance of that particular organization, and also considering the cost benefit as you've just explained. What is the impact of the risks and the cost of mitigating the risks? So those considerations, once they have been considered appropriately, a decision can then be made. And also, if there are compensating controls, if there are other ways to manage that risk such that the impact does not materialize. Thank you. I think that's the only question we have so far on the chat.
Okay.
There is
yeah,
a question in the chat also, right? From
yeah, is it a
Banjo.
question? Yes. The last post on the chat.
Yes, if you could recommend only few cybersecurity controls that organizations or institutions should implement immediately, regardless of size, what would that be and why?
Well, I'm not going to the why too much, but I mean, look at any framework, but assets, you need to figure out what you have. One, you need to know what you have. So that way you can also evaluate risk from there. And the second one, I will say, is the access to privilege accounts or roles. Those are two ones that I will look really quick, like who has access to what and why into it, So go into role-based access controls. Those are really two of them. But those things I will look right away. But any framework will guide you where you have.
Okay. Thank you. I think there's a comment. Someone wants to make a comment. Folahami Ogunbodede. Oh, okay. You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
If you recall everyone. All right, you're welcome. Please make
Can
a
you
comment.
hear me, please?
We can hear you, yes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ricardo. That's a very nice lecture. But I think in addition to what we've done, and in addition to all of this, do you think institutions in Nigeria should adopt a certain standard, maybe uniformly, so that going forward, for example, like ISO 27001, NIST, all these standards, I think it is very important so that whatever they want to do in terms of putting framework in place, in terms of achieving this form of strong cyber environment or cyber landscape. What do you think, Rick?
That's a great question. I don't think I'm qualified to answer for Nigeria, but your idea sounds really good. If there's a standard for everyone to follow, awesome, great. Knowing how political landscapes work in institutions, that might be a high mountain to climb, I will say. But that shouldn't stop an institution from deciding what framework to choose to do that. So, sure, if you can come to between the institutions to come up with a standard, great. But if not, please use one of the frameworks and start from there.
I think we have one last question from Dr. Daniel Dauda Wisdom. He said, how best can organizations minimize risks with little cost?
Use one of the frameworks and see where we go. You minimize risk just by starting one of the frameworks and see what you have. Do the assets inventory, see what software you have, what hardware you have, where this hardware lives, what areas, where in the building. Do that first part, and then look into the risk. This is a hard question. There's no, even with little cost, you might be able to lower the risk on many of the systems by just knowing what you have. You can avoid that, some of that. So take it one step at a time, but take it, and then move on and move into it. That sounds like a politician.
We have
Sorry.
on the chat.
Yes.
From what I can see. So I will just point out a few key takeaways from your from the 9 sections that you covered, Ricardo, on module 4. And for me, I will just point one aspect for which I believe that if we adopt such a culture, even at a personal level, is going to help in terms of improving cybersecurity. I remember you talked about vulnerability and patch management. And for most times, we tend to look at it holistically from an institution perspective, but we don't look at it from our own personal lives. For example, for our personal devices, our phones, our laptops, most times we don't even look at the considerations that we should have them patched. And as you pointed out, this is something that we should always ensure that our handheld devices, our laptops, those devices that are even our personal devices, that we spend the not so much data, but I know most of the consideration is that it costs data to patch these devices. But I think it's something that is important for us to adopt to ensure that, yes, that our systems are protected and there's a level of security, even at our own personal level, before we even get to the institutional level. And I think that's one thing that I'm taking away from your presentation. So, but having said that, on the next steps, which is module 5, and that section or that part of module 5 covers secure remote work and collaboration. And that's something that I want to encourage each and every one of us. It's built on the fact that we should understand the security risks around remote work, how to ensure that our devices are secure no matter the location where we are, in terms of having secure internet connection, and also how to use collaboration tools, cloud collaboration tools in a secure way. How do we share file? How do we collaborate as researchers, as educationists, and as participants in the educational environment? How do we ensure that, yes, we can collaborate effectively, securely, and also ensure that we don't create vulnerabilities or allow for issues from our own operations? And then finally, we also are going to look at how to set up secure virtual meetings and secure communication, no matter where you are. For example, this meeting that we are in, I believe we've not really had any security incident, but there are incidents that can arise from virtual meetings. Yeah. And then finally, we're also going to look at how to manage all this securely from an institutional perspective. And that's what we are moving into in module 5. And I would want to encourage each and every one of us, especially for those of us that have not gone through module 1, 2, 3, and 4, to take time to build on from module 1, 2, 3, and 4, because module 5 builds knowledge that has been developed from module 1 to module 4. And so I want to encourage each and every one of us to start and to engage with the LMS platform. And hopefully, we're going to still have someone as great as Ricardo to also moderate the post-module 5 webinar. So I think that will be all from my own end. Back to you, Mr. Bolaji.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Marco. I believe you've mentioned most of the things, or many very important things that we have covered in today's session. I want to say thank you again to Mr. Ricardo and everyone Lastly, on the agenda today, we'll be having the address of the project coordinator. I know we spent so much time. Thank you so much for the patience. So, sir, you're welcome on board.
Thank you very much, Tolu. And let me also add my voice to say thank you, Ricardo, for that wonderful presentation. The way you had sliced it and dissected it, it was really, really helpful. One thing that I would just like to mention as we'll wrap up is one of the key takeaways that we are expecting or that we were hoping, and I think I'm beginning to see that already manifesting, is the fact that the ability for us to be able to make a decision collectively. And so this is all about increasing our knowledge, increasing the awareness, increasing some of the basic things that majority of us might know, but we've not been paying attention to, and then helping us in a way to come up with some form of standard. Now, in terms of the framework, I love the question when it was asked that when it was pushed to Ricardo to suggest like a single framework that is something that is adaptable in the Nigerian context or in the Nigerian institution. Now, you will recall that I mentioned earlier on that in the next couple of weeks, we will start having visit to the institution with the engaging with the coordinator. This is one of the things that we hope to achieve. So this is going to be like a collective effort. This is going to be like a collective decision. And I like the fact that the question has already been raised. So we will be consulting, which is part of what we will be doing when we come visiting your school. And of course, to assist and sit down with the coordinator, be more technical in terms of, so basically is in terms of the governance and the framework, okay, as it relates at the institutional level. And I'm hoping and I'm hopeful that we will be able to achieve this. It is good that I see the question being raised. I see some of the question that was asked by Mr. Tope. I think I got it right the other time, which is centered around governance. And I'm also hearing things that are shaping around adoption of framework, which is very, very key. So with that, I want to say thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining, and look forward to having the Module 5 to be open, and also look forward to hearing from us very soon, most especially with the coordinators from the various institutions, to start engaging and to start scheduling some of these visits to your institution. And so we'll start having some of these things shaping out as it's content, as it's specific to the various institutions. And then collectively, we will be able to adopt a framework that can cut across easily each and every one of us. Again, I want to say thank you. It's been an engaging afternoon, and thank you also to our presenter again this morning. I know you're still in the very early hours. A very good morning to you. A very good afternoon to everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.